Can I start?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's my great pleasure to welcome you today at 1 p.m. to present the huge work that has been done by the whole ecosystem to identify the startups, scale-ups, some SMEs in the AI landscape in Belgium. And to present that, I have the pleasure and the honor to welcome three important personalities, key personalities of the ecosystem. First of all, Nicolas van Zeebroek will introduce the topic. Then Patrice Latin will present the mapping itself. And Omar Mohout will then comment and tell us a bit about the investment in Europe and in Belgium. Afterwards, we will have the opportunity to have a Q&A and some panel discussion between us. So, Nicolas, you are full-time professor at Solvay Brussels School of Economics and Management at Université Libre de Bruxelles. And currently, you serve as a Deputy Dean for Research and Management at SBS and as adjunct to the President of the University for IT and Digital Matters. Your research and teaching cover the economics and strategy of innovation and digitalization. And after several years of research on innovation and intellectual property, you now investigate how digital technology affects the performance and organization of firms and industries. Your research has appeared in international journals such as Management Science, Research Policy, Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan Management Review, Stanford Technology Law Review, Pattern Recognition, or Information Economics and Policy. Next to research and teaching, you're regularly interviewed on digital matters in national media and serve as a consultant and keynote speaker on digital strategy and transformation for private and public organizations. So the floor is yours, Nicolas.
Thank you so much, Nathanael, for the invitation and for the kind words. So I'm trying to share my screen. Could someone confirm that that you can see them? Yes, good. So thank you. What I'm going to try to do is just to sketch a little bit the scene for as an introduction to the great work that that my colleagues will present you. But first of all, what I'd like to try to do in just 1-2 minutes is to remind you, perhaps, or give you one way to sketch the scene by placing AI as part of something that is far broader, which is digital transformation and digitalization. And I'd like to summarize that with this figure by saying, at the end of the day, digital is about a set of technological capabilities that go from dematerialization, observation, prediction, connectivity, and materialization to include indeed what AI ultimately does or aims to do, which is to make predictions. And then those technological capabilities enable a set of strategies or changes to the way businesses and industries operate that again can be summarized with these 5 boxes here, including automation, virtualization, personalization, the shift to services, and decentralization, which includes platforms and stuff like that. Now, if you look at the role of AI in these new digital strategies, which are really the core of digital transformation today, clearly the prediction capability of AI is absolutely critical to enabling all of those 5 strategies. So AI is gaining in importance because it's increasingly important to enable those digital strategies overall. Now, if you look at how firms are getting AI technology into their businesses, a survey we recently conducted for the European Commission last year among European businesses revealed that by and large, firms adopting AI would primarily turn to software solutions that are readily available for use, or will hire external experts, typically consultants or IT developers from the outside to develop solutions for them. It's only a quarter of the adopters that are able to either develop stuff in AI really for themselves or to modify commercial or open source packages. And that points at clearly a need to understand what is the channel from which technology or through which technology flows from technology providers or innovators to the businesses. And that's where it's probably interesting to keep in mind that the ICT industry has a very specific shape, which is not the shape of a traditional value chain as we used to present industries some years ago, but it's rather a stacked sandwich or lasagna of players organized in different interdependent layers, from the infrastructure providers, where you will find the software providers, the big names, but also the smaller ones, of course, that provide the core technology itself, but that includes also the equipment and the data centers. Then you have the telecom operators providing the connectivity. And then you have the application services and providers, including the platforms, but also, of course, independent software vendors. And then finally, you have the businesses and the end users consuming and also contributing to developing the ecosystem. And this is an ecosystem that's driven not by traditional customer and provider relationships, but by much more sophisticated relationships that we generally summarize with the name of co-opetition, where players are generally both dependent on each other and also competing with each other. Now, with that in mind, if you look at what is happening in Europe, you see that the matrix that we're using is essentially a matrix that's dominated by US and Chinese firms. And that's a concern, of course, when it gets to technologies that are so critical to enable the industry and the businesses today. But that leads me to my core point, which is who is really driving AI innovation, or more specifically. So if you really zoom on AI, where is innovation in AI really coming from? Well, it's not an easy question to answer, but one way to look at this is typically to go to patent databases and look at who is filing for patent applications related to AI. Now you can see that there's clearly a growing race for patents in AI. That is clearly accelerating, that has been accelerating over the past few years. And you can see that it's a world that's dominated by big names that no one would be surprised to find there, I suppose, starting with Microsoft and IBM, obviously, as the two largest holders of AI patents in the world. But if you look at the country distribution of those patents, you will notice that most of them are actually held by US firms, quickly followed, actually followed by China and then quickly Europe. But that, of course, is something you need to be careful about because, as you might know, software is typically patentable in the US, not in Europe, for instance. So patents are just one way to look at the picture. And that's actually suggesting that AI is actually mainly provided by big players that hold these large portfolios of patents. But I think that would be a hasty conclusion, because in fact, one thing that has been observed over the past few decades is that there is clearly a decline in corporate science overall, which is the ability of firms to work on basic science and to really publish their results, not just through patents or products, but really to publish their results as scientific articles. And that has been drying up over time. It has been largely documented by Ashish Arora and colleagues. And that's part of a broader story, which is that the geography of innovation, especially with digital and with AI, is shifting from big tech and big labs increasingly to startups. And that's what you see clearly in recent studies looking at the ecosystems of AI, where you see this shift of innovation and also investments that are massively shifting from the big techs to the startups and the scale-ups. And that's really why it's so important to understand this ecosystem and how it works. Because as you will see in a minute, and that will be my last point, the technology startups are absolutely critical in transferring AI knowledge and technology to the broad using industries. And here are the three main channels, as far as we know, in terms of how technology, especially AI tech, flows to the market. First of all, it flows from university and public research institutes to the markets through spin-offs and collaboration. That's a well-known story, nothing new there, except that the rate of spin-off creations around AI has clearly increased in the past few years in quite a significant way. But then the main channel here that needs to be understood is probably the way startups mediate technology, technology transfer by not just creating technology, but also pushing AI technology, frontier technology to the industry through software and services that they sell, or also through M&As when they are acquired by larger firms. Unfortunately, if you look at this, a lot of those acquisitions are made by big US firms, and that's of course a concern in terms of what is happening here in Europe. But lastly, it's also important to look at labor mobility, and our research shows that the role of external IT providers in draining knowledge, in channeling knowledge and technology within firms is absolutely instrumental. And there's therefore a key role for startups and scale-ups, not just to develop the technology, but to really skill the people and push the technology to the broader market. So in sum, my main points are these. First of all, AI needs to be understood as a core enabler of something much bigger, which is called sometimes digitalization or digital transformation. And AI tech is not just innovated by big tech and corporates and maybe university labs as used to be the case, but it's disproportionately innovated by startups and scale-ups. And that's why it's absolutely fundamental to better understand what is the ecosystem of startups and scale-ups, especially here in Belgium. And that's where my colleagues' work here will be absolutely brilliant and useful there, especially given the role that startups have in transferring AI knowledge and technology throughout the industry. And that's why really the need for structuring and encouraging the startup and scale-up ecosystem is of paramount importance. And I think that's really why we need to be listening very carefully to what Patrice and Omar will share with us now. Thank you.
Nicolas, can we hear me? Yeah. Thank you so much. So now I have the pleasure to introduce my friend, a very friend, Patrice. But Patrice, you are EY partner and leads the team of an internal startup or scale-up with more than 30 consultants to provide a broad range of data analytics and artificial intelligence services for financial services in Belgian organization. You have gained over 20 years of advisory and project delivery experience in financial services, government, retail, manufacturing, and high-tech industries in the field of information management, data engineering, information strategy, data science, artificial intelligence, and robotics. You also teach data visualization, BI architecture, machine learning and AI system at Solvay Brussels School of Economics and Management. You have your PhD from the Applied Science Faculty of the Université Libre de Bruxelles in machine learning. And you have also a Master of Applied Science in Electromechanics Engineering from the ULB. So thank you so much for the contribution of EY also in what will be presented now. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nathaniel. Thank you for, firstly, the opportunity given to me, my team, to support yours in having a view about the startups in AI active in Belgium. And thank you for your introduction, a long kind of biography. So I represent EY, indeed, contributed to that. And for EY, startup scale-ups is a very important domain in Belgium. This is why we have created the Factory, which is a kind of organization within EY to support, enable innovators, startup scale-ups, and fund possibly then or coach startups in Belgium overall, not only in artificial intelligence. So after Nicolas' presentation, what about, let's say, Little Belgium? Well, Little Belgium is not so little regarding AI. This is already known through universities, but also in the reality of all the activities that obviously we've seen this week already. But what about startups and scale-ups? Where are these companies in Belgium? How many are they? What are they doing? And how can we better connect, and how AI for Belgium especially can better connect to these companies and connect all the people so that we can really, as mentioned by Nicola, enable business strategies, enable more business, more activities for the good and for other type of work in multiple organizations. So why AI for Belgium has initiated an online cartography of AI startups and scale-ups, connecting people, connecting companies. This is probably a first good reason to do so. Encourage, there's a mistake with a T there, encourage entrepreneurship and innovation, being sure that everybody can be supported, that you have the visibility as a startup or scale up to grow and to propose your services and not be hidden by bigger companies or just showing that how innovative the product, the services are made and how it can serve better society. For AI for Belgium, obviously stay at the crossroad of any AI expertise and activities beyond universities, beyond sponsors or companies contributing to their point of view, to research, but also on really what's happening in AI. This is just crucial to live this really growing activities. And then Belgium is not alone. Obviously, it's to be, as mentioned already by Nathanael, integrate with the European countries. This cartography has been already launched by France, by Germany, by Sweden. So what about Belgium? It's obviously we should be in that journey as well and showcase how many companies and what we do in Belgium. That was the why. So in the end, very concretely, what it is, the Belgian AI landscape for startups and scale-ups. It's a web page now on the website of AI for Belgium. So this is a central entry for anybody who is eager to know, okay, I need this, I need that. It's a database of 439 companies. At least that's the figure I've noticed before the meeting. That's quite impressive already, but that's not enough. We aim to see how it can evolve, how these companies are growing, how new companies will be active sooner or later. So that's why we built this simple interactive tool to query, to understand, and possibly then to interact and to click to this company or that company, that startup to understand what it is, who is behind this, and possibly connect with them. And so that's really an access point to these AI startups and scale-ups themselves. So before showing you this page for the first time, actually, officially, let's clarify a bit what it is not. As well, and also translated these what is not in actually next steps. It's the first version, obviously, of the cartography. It's about data about startup and scale-ups. So it's not necessarily 100% correct in terms of completeness, accuracy. So we will, AI for Belgium will encourage any companies that are listed or not listed to alert, to inform that something is wrong, that the category might not be necessarily right, and that's there's space for improvement for sure, and waiting for the feedback. So that again, this connection happens really. So being actively maintained, it's not just a one shot. Obviously, the goal of this webpage is to live with the activities of our startups and being sure that we enrich this database so that the team behind can actually be sure that we have up-to-date information and useful information for the community. The web page on its own has a few features. There's a little disclaimer already. You can't do a lot of things yet, but still you can visualize, you can have a first grasp of the market. So let's see this. Concretely, what does that mean? So this is the AI for Belgium, the AI for Belgium webpage, the new one. So this starts with some visualization where you can see, maybe I can make my screen a little bit bigger. We'll give it a try. Voilà. So you come to the AI for Belgium webpage, and then you have in the menu immediately AI landscape, and you will reach that page here that you see. So you will see already Belgium, the last 10 years, what happened. In Belgium, you see the growth in some region more than other regions. So that brings some insights. If you see some charts, you see already where actually AI is active. You see a lot in services and healthcare. Omar will certainly comment more on these aspects. Which region, which size these companies have. Again, there's startups and scale-ups. There's a question of definition. Actually, what is AI? What is a startup doing AI? Is it in the right category? Is it really what we call AI? And that's an ecosystem, of course, of activities and capabilities. And then when these companies were actually founded, as well as interesting information, we can also possibly later on add the financial information, the people behind, and other information. Then what you have is actually the infographics, very similar to what France, Sweden, and Germany have made, is actually showing all the companies, all companies that the contributors have actually successfully gathered so far. And you can click on these logos, you see the names underneath. It's currently categorized by services, sector, and within sector you have healthcare and biotech, you have agriculture, legal and fintech companies, social, industrial, automotive, retail, all of them are there, technologies, enterprises, voila. So we AI for Belgium encourage a lot to see this cartography. I think it's an amazing database for really knowing who is really active. Even my company, myself, I'm really eager to partner with many of them to do better business for our clients. So that's definitely something I will look for in the coming days again. You can click on the companies and reach those you don't know. And then just a final word to thank all the contributors to this initiative, and let's hope that this webpage will be useful, will be maintained and improved, and that we will see the figures growing with today 439, but tomorrow 1,000, 2,000 startups, because this is really how the economy in Belgium will also be better and better. So now give back the word to Nathanael for the following comment on these information.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Patrice. I will introduce first Omar Mohout. You know him already, I'm sure, to comment on this and maybe to say a little word about all the question of startups and scale up within Europe and in Belgium specifically. Omar, your short bio is so long. You are currently entrepreneur fellow at CIRIS and a former technology entrepreneur. You have widely published in technology. You have acted as C-level advisor to high-growth startup, as well as Fortune 500 companies. And you are professor of entrepreneurship at Antwerp Management School and Solvay Brussels Schools of Economics and Management. You are the author of several books that are reference to us because you are Mr. Startup and Scale Up, Tech Startup and Scale Up in Belgium, I would say. So please, I cannot cite everything. Thank you very much for being there today, and I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Nathanael. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'm very proud for what you reached with AI for Belgium. Today, to have all data together in one place, like Patrice was presenting, is extremely important. And I will show you why it's important. It will help us to understand the landscape. It will help us to create a perspective and insights on the landscape. And above all, it will guide us towards a better future for the ecosystem and inspire others to join also the ecosystem. This presentation that I have will only show you a small part of the whole database, just product companies, not service companies. And I look forward to see the same approach with the full data that we have now in the database and try to understand what's happening in the ecosystem. So once again, this is just the product startups, not service companies involved, to give you some insights where we stand in Belgium and how do we compare to the rest of Europe. Now, if you look to the map that just been shown, a bit similar, but only for product companies in AI, you see something like, that should show like this one. And not surprising, all the AI and all tech companies in general are based in bigger cities on the one side, hence the big spot, Brussels in the middle, and also link it to universities. So you can see cities where the university have more chance to have an AI startup and scale up on their area than other cities which are smaller, only university involved in there. If you break it down by technology, you can, for instance, see what kind of AI we have. It's a very broad umbrella AI. So I break it down by autonomous vehicles, chatbots, RPA, computer vision, speech, etc., etc., etc. Again, it's a mix of companies spread over different spots here in Belgium. However, startups, scale-ups tend to cluster together in hotspots. If you look to Belgium, our AI hotspots are the following places. If you look to the left-hand side, you can see in Ghent, it's Tech Lane, linked to the University of Ghent. As such, you have Meat District also in Ghent. Brussels, the hotspot is B-Central. I'm one of the founders and ambassadors. I'm very proud that we made a campus around this technology in the center of Brussels. If you look to Leuven-en-Neuve, it's Science Park linked to the university, of course, not really a surprise. Same for Liège and Leuven, where Liège Science Park or the different campuses in Leuven are really linked to the university and spin-offs and the intelligence and students around that. You have for Limburg, Corda campus, the biggest tech campus in Belgium right now, also for AI. And Antwerp is the beacon, the hotspot for AI startups and scale-ups. So these are the clusters where the most of them are clustering together as an ecosystem. Now, if we look by region, then you will see that around 69% are based in Flanders. Brussels is 16%, Wallonia is 15% of all these companies. If you break it down by the type of company, startup or scale-up. Scale-up in this case, because there's always a discussion about what's a scale-up or not. Scale-up in this case is a company which has at least 10 employees working as a team in the company, or has a branch outside Belgium, so they are going for international expansion, or they already did the funding of a Series A to expand. So this is the definition of the 44% here. You can see that there's a bit more scale-ups than startups, historically speaking. Also surprising is Deadpool. Only 4% of these companies managed to go bankrupt. It's extremely low. It's a young ecosystem still. It shows that there's a lot of high chance of success. And 11% are acquired. That could be better. Our neighbors, Netherlands and France, are around 15 to 20%. So in that sense, we also have to go in maturity in terms of exits and M&A. Having said that, if you look to the curve cumulative speaking of how many of these companies are adding every year, you can see turning point in 2011. This is the year that accelerated in terms of AI startups that being launched in that year. It looks like it's been flat last year. It's not. It's because the data is always behind, of course. So I'm pretty sure that the curve is even increasing if you look back 1 year from now. So the last 10 years, the AI landscape really started to take shape here in Belgium. Now, if you look at the industries, where are these AI active? The number one is health tech. Not a surprise, because health tech is the number one industry anyway in Belgium for all kinds of technology companies. It's number 2 in Europe. Fintech is number 1 in Europe. Health tech is number 2. So in health tech, we have the highest number of AI companies, product companies active, followed by manufacturing, innovation for manufacturing companies. We have a manufacturing industry here in Belgium who needs solutions, including AI, like predictive maintenance, for instance. BI is number 3, which is normally not in the top 5. So of course, AI is quite powerful in that environment. Number 4 is marketing advertisement, everything around CRM, online tools, you name it, to analyze a lot of data that happens online. Number 5 is fintech and human resource technology, where AI companies are focusing on. The top 5 or top 6 industries accounts for 51% of all AI companies here in Belgium. So it's quite focused compared to other technologies active here in Belgium. Another view that we can take is the categories. If we group them by different technologies around AI and see how they can be in one category which is not a specific industry, you see that Industry 4.0, remember manufacturing is the number 1. Then you have smart cities, how to make cities smart using AI. Think about computer vision, for instance, crowd control. Followed by smart ports, think about airports or security environments. Then we have digital workplace, how we can make our environment where we work smarter. And lastly, precision health, which is focusing on one-to-one health for individuals in terms of driven by AI. Again, it's about 70% almost. It's very focused on these categories. If you look to the technology breakdown, then 2/3 are in generic AI, like ML, for instance. Then we have computer vision, we have robotics, chatbots, autonomous vehicles is quite small, of course. Speech is even smaller than that. Historically, we should be strong in that. RPA are the ones who are really creating a product here. We have a lot of service companies implementing RPA. So in the service database, you see much more RPA popping up than in the product database, like the one we're using here at Series. Interesting enough, 88% of all these companies are business-to-business oriented, which is much higher than the general ecosystem for startups and scale-ups, where it's 70%. So we are really clearly a very focused B2B environment and ecosystem for AI. Only 12% are consumer-focused as such. Also interesting, to my own surprise, when I analyzed the data, 28% of these startups have a branch international, which means all of them are scale-ups by definition, which is very high compared to the rest of the ecosystem. It's almost twice as high. So AI companies are growing more international than the other ecosystem members, other startups and scale-ups. The breakdown per country is similar. A quarter to them goes to the US. It's a big market. It's open for innovation. You can raise funding over there. So it's quite normal. Followed by the countries around us, which are France, Netherlands, UK, and Germany. So the destination is the same, like everyone else, but the penetration in other markets, it's extremely high, twice as high in average compared to other technology startups and scale-ups, which is really good news. That means it's an ecosystem which is growing extremely fast. If you look to spin-off, 19% of them are coming from a spin-off university or institute, which is again higher than average. Normally it's around 10, 11% for the ecosystem. So it's much more spin-offs in AI than we have in the rest of the ecosystem. If you break it down by university, KU Leuven is number 1. Then you have UGent, Antwerp, UC Louvain, the VUB, Liège, and then everybody else. The other side of the story is acceleration programs, supporting them to grow. You can see that 1 out of 3 of these companies are part of an acceleration program. So looking for support to accelerate even faster. Number 1 in the number here, in number of portfolio companies, IMEC iStart. followed by Start KBC, Scaleups Flanders, here in Brussels, the Birdhouse, and a number of other ones which are smaller in this case. So a lot of support is given to these companies to grow even faster. If you look to founders, like the rest of the ecosystem, the majority are male as CEO or as founder. Only 11% are female, which is in line with the rest of the ecosystem. That's nothing to do with AI, it has to do with the tech ecosystem. Belgium is around 9%, so we do a bit better in AI than compared to the other tech companies. But this is a general trend here in Belgium and also in Europe. Europe is around 9–10%, even lower sometimes. So we're doing better than Europe, we're doing better than the rest of the ecosystem in Belgium with AI, but of course it's still a low number as such. What about investments? How much money is flowing to these companies for the last 9 years? You can see yearly it gets higher and higher, from 10–11 million in 2012, 2013, up to hundreds of millions right now. It was a bit less last year as such compared to 2019, but it's promising already. We're at 69 million in the first quarter of the year. So we are now in the hundreds of millions of investment flowing to these companies. One day, I hope we will go to the billion. It will be a big mark, but so far we're not there yet. We are in the hundreds of millions of funding going to these companies. It means that around 20% of venture capital is going to AI startups and scale-ups. I assume, but it's an assumption, this will only increase as a percentage and also as a number in the coming years. AI is a real game changer compared to Internet of Things, compared to blockchain, compared to ER and VR. So it's the biggest impact in terms of technology for the years to come. How do we compare now from this point of view with the rest of Europe? To end my presentation. On the left-hand side, you see the number of scale-ups that raised in the last 6 years or 5 years, actually, at least 750,000 euros in Europe. Indication of scaling up. And you can see the number of scale-ups. Belgium is doing extremely well. Behind the top 3, the big countries, the big economies like the UK, France, and Germany. We're in the group with Sweden and Switzerland, the Scandinavian countries, and the Netherlands, in number of companies. So the potential is in Belgium clearly to be here in a very nice spot European-wide. But if you look to the funding, you can see that we are number 10, which means other countries are raising much more money than us. So the issue is not the number and the quality of our scale-ups. The issue is to have the money to make them go to the next level. You can see, for instance, number 4 is Romania, thanks to one single company, UiPath, which is a unicorn. So one company can make a difference in this case. So I believe that Belgium has all the potential, all the number of companies, all the right technology, all the talent on board. If we get more money, we can grow faster and be in the tier 2. Tier 1 is Germany, UK, France, of course, the big economies. Tier 2 are Scandinavian countries, Switzerland, Netherlands, and Belgium. And we can have a very strong position in AI European-wide. I hope that this short presentation gives you a guidance on what's happening in the ecosystem. I hope you get some new insights and perspective. I hope I inspired you even to go further with our ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Omar, for this brilliant presentation. It was very complimentary. I had some questions, and they are related to the first question that was asked in the chat, and that is a bit maybe provocative. The question is, how do you want that our AI startups and scale-up are acquired by foreigners? I suppose, I interpret that the question is related to the fact that we are publishing actually the mapping. Can you react on that? Omar, your slides are still shared, I think.
Yes.
Maybe we can unshare them so that we can see everyone. Okay, so it is related to investment. So do you want to answer?
I'm happy to reply to the question. I'm a firm believer in exits, because at the end of the day, if you make an exit, it means the entrepreneur receives a lot of money, and there are 2 possibilities. He or she will reinvest the money in other companies in a smart way because they have experience, or he or she will start a new company with the knowledge that they have to go to the next level. If you look to Silicon Valley, the power of it is exit driven. If you look to PayPal, they made an exit, 350 million back then. Thanks to PayPal, today we have LinkedIn, we have YouTube, we have SpaceX, we have all these companies, Tesla, because founders made an exit and went to the next level as investors or as serial entrepreneurs. So exits are a good thing.
Okay, Nicolas, do you want to comment on that?
Well, maybe to be provocative as well, and echoing also a comment by Alexander, do we have a say there? I mean, who is we in the question, and who are we anyways to judge how an entrepreneur should consider his or her exit strategy? I believe for entrepreneurs, a good exit is generally a very good outcome. I don't know that many startups or scale-ups that were purchased against their own will. And so who would we be to prevent startups, entrepreneurs from selling their business to a company that would be willing to acquire it? So I don't think that is really the way to frame the question. The question is, what is our ambition in terms of building from the seeds that the existing scale-ups and startups are providing? And how do we do to make sure, as Omar suggests, that those investments this money afterwards is reinvested in the local ecosystem? And that's where it's really important to focus on what we can do to make Brussels and Belgium overall a lively place to succeed with startups and scale-ups. If we do that, we shouldn't worry too much about those exiting.
Patrice, if you want to comment, but
not specifically.
Okay.
For you, maybe Nicolas.
I will ask the next question. So what is your vision on the investment landscape in Belgium? Omar told us a bit about, and I have a specific question for corporate investment, because we've seen, for example, in France, when I was there, that there was many possibility of investment from BPI, for example, BPI France, who is very active, and there are many funds existing. But one key issue would be that the big corporates invest more also in acquisition. And I think in the question that was asked by a researcher, a brilliant researcher from VUB, is also related to sovereignty. How do we do if every companies are acquired after the seed phase or the Serie A phase? So I'll leave you the floor. Nicolas?
Yeah, it's not that straightforward to answer. So I would say that you are happy when startups and scale-ups prosper overall. The question of sovereignty should be asked at the right level and at the right scale. I know the US, for instance, express a lot of concern about them losing the DI race to China, and what are the threats that it poses to US security. I mean, it would be legitimate for Europe and the European Union to ask itself the question, what are the core technologies that we need to be able to master at a minimum level in Europe? And what is the minimum control we need to keep over critical industries? And that applies certainly to critical technology like AI, and certainly also to the infrastructure underlying it. At the moment, it's very clear, as I said at the beginning of the session, that we run on a matrix that is mainly US and China. So it's legitimate to ask the question, but I think that's a lost battle already. If the name of the game is to maintain sovereignty over the digital ecosystem, I think Europe has lost the game, the race already. But what is important is that we keep a capability to innovate, certainly, and to invest on businesses that are fueling the innovation engine, and that's really important.
Thank you, Nicolas. Omar, don't see if you raise your hand. Or...
On a communal level, I think from that point of view, I am pro free markets. I think we should not limit anything to be acquired or not. It's one of the few ways for entrepreneurs to make money here without paying taxes is by doing exits. Good or bad, that's the situation. Fiscally, it's very interesting to do an exit in Belgium. It's not in other countries, for instance. So from that point of view, I believe that we should be open that our technology get acquired, our companies by even foreign companies. I am not, I am against to limit that. At the same time, I'm also a citizen of Europe. I'm concerned about privacy, impact of AI. Let's also be honest from ethical point of view. So we as a society have to ask the question, what do we want? GDPR is a step forward in the good direction. So I think on a political level, yes, we have to put some rules in there. That's extremely important. So I understand the two things as a citizen, as an entrepreneur, I believe we should not put any limits.
Thank you, Omar. So I have a question that is very practical, so I will answer. There is at least one company missing, so that's great. Yeah, there is only one remark in this sense. So how can a company register? So please go to the AI for Belgium website and register. And you will be included. It's iLudus. So the second question from a journalist that follows very narrowly the tech ecosystem and is Pierre-François Lovens. Do you think the weak percentage for Wallonia is linked to the fact that some of the AI startups and scale-up active in Wallonia have their headquarters in Brussels? It's not an easy question, I suppose. Do you have a clue about that? We should maybe refine.
It's a matter of to see where are the activities if a startup is headquartered in Brussels and has activities in Wallonia. That's probably something that we need to add as a feature to the cartography, to some extent, to know where a company in the north works in the south and vice versa. Personally, I don't know. We just use the addresses of the headquarters, indeed. But as a matter of fact, they are registered, not necessarily in Wallonia, indeed. But the point is, where is the activity of AI and how the startups and scale-ups serve this activity? That would be an interesting dimension to add.
So questions from Niels Quinten. During the Belgian AI Week, I've seen a lot of focus on creating AI for business-oriented clients. Why there is not so much focus on AI for consumers in Belgium? For example, in the form of apps like Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Is it a question for me? I don't know. Do you want to comment on that?
I could maybe comment or just give a first idea, but if you look at the people who are entrepreneurs and come from university where as data scientists or so, they're serving the citizen. The business model on its own is probably not appealing as such by default, and so many things already exist by large companies that the attraction from young entrepreneurs and scientists would go to the business because the business is asking a lot of questions and there's a lot to do. While the commodities where we've seen with Google and Pinterest and Facebook, etc., is all about citizens and is already accessible at low cost. So the big thing to do, according to me, is on the business, as we've seen in some statistics shown by Omar, that there's many industries that are not yet served by AI, and there's probably an opportunity there to do more.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrice. Omar, do you have a clue comparing Belgium with Europe?
From a B2B
Yeah.
standpoint, you mean? In general, Europe is B2B. So compared to, if you look to Silicon Valley, its majority is B2C. You know, all these companies like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Apple, you name them, they're all actually, you know them because they're B2C. Here in Europe, we are strongly B2B, except for Spotify, which is a B2C company. The majority of companies are really in B2B, and Belgium is even stronger in B2B. So it's not a surprise that EI is also following the same pattern. One theory could be that you need more capital to start and creating consumer brands and get to consumers individually. As such, you need more money compared to B2B, where you can start with first couple of customers paying you, and you can gradually grow as such. It's an assumption, it's a hypothesis, but could be explained why we are a stronger B2B country compared to other countries. But Europe is anyway, in general, B2B oriented.
Yeah, you told us, Nicolas, yes?
If I can add on that, just another assumption you could make is that growing a B2C business also requires, especially with network effects based models, it requires a homogeneous market from which you can really grow. And the market fragmentation and the cultural and language barriers that you have all over the place in Europe are a huge obstacle to scaling super fast a B2C business. And those B2C models, if you cannot scale them really, really fast, which takes capital indeed, but in Europe, especially compared to China or the US, takes a lot of embarrassment every time you cross a new border. And so that's potentially also a handicap that Europe has, and Belgium as well.
Yes, indeed. You wrote a paper about that, the fragmentation of the European landscape, and I use the image often to present our activities. So we have a practical question I will answer immediately. So can we also register on AI for Belgium if we are not a specialist and don't have enough knowledge? At the beginning, yes, it was for the expert. So you can register, just please mention in the comment that you are not an expert, and we will make it evolve to add the people that are only interested in. So you can register, you will have access to all the events, because all the events are mainly open, and but we will not name you as an expert. Another, Andrei Miodetsky, who is very known here in the ecosystem, says, okay, VC funding should follow Silicon Valley spirit and think big. This will create strong startups. So, okay, it's a comment. I don't know if you want to comment the comments.
Well, I do agree with the statement to some extent that clearly there's also a question of how ambitious European entrepreneurs are compared to their Silicon Valley peers, and the same applies to VC funds as well. But it's a strange question to answer this way. It's important to be ambitious for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I will ask you the last question, because we will end at 57 to enter the next session. So the last question is about technology transfer. Do you observe something different regarding AI in terms of technology transfer? Do you think the relation between the university labs and the startups, it's much more narrow than in other sector, or the speed of the technology transfer?
Yeah, maybe just one comment on that, which is one particularity of AI is that it's harder to just package the technology and push it as such compared to more traditional technologies. And so there is a lot of know-how and of knowledge that needs to be transferred along with the product itself. And that makes it so that technology transfer relies there even more on interpersonal networks and human-to-human knowledge spillovers. And that's probably where both the spin-offs from universities and the startups and scale-ups really play a major role, because they form this network, this very dense network of people moving around and serving different people in different industries, and I think that's really instrumental in this case. This being said, if I may, just one comment, and sorry for taking the time, but really, when we talk about AI today, we talk about frontier AI generally, but there's AI stuff that is packaged, that has been packaged for a while in a very long-standing way. If you think of optical character recognition or OCR, that's something everybody uses today. We don't call it AI anymore. Yeah. It has become a feature, and there you don't really need knowledge transfer anymore to just use an OCR package. So it depends on how frontier the technology you're looking to transfer really is.
But still a lot to do with the fragmentation we were referring just before, in terms of language. French, Dutch, Spanish, etc. We are far behind again what we are capable to do with English language.
Yeah, maybe AI could help
for that again.
Thank you. So thank you very much to all panelists, Omar, Patrice, Nicolas, for being there. We will follow up with the questions. Please ask the question to AI for Belgium or with the contact address you have on that. Now we will have a wonderful panel about future of job, skills and education with François Tadei, Jeroen Franssens, Kathleen Müller, Eckhart Ernst, and Laurent Ledoux. Petra de Sutter will also do the introductory keynote. So please follow this exceptional session. Afterwards, we will have a keynote from Pascal Coppens, China, the first AI superpower. So I think many people are expecting this keynote. And then we have Miss AI in Belgium, Mieke de Ketelaar, who will present her new book. Mieke is the AI director of the IMEC, and she will present her new book. And then a little surprise, she will be the moderator for the next speaker, who is Anouk Wipprecht, who is the most famous fashion design tech worldwide, that works with smart clothes and fashion, and works closely with artificial intelligence and sensors. In parallel, in the beginning of the afternoon, you will have a special track by AI for Growth, which is really a really active network in Flanders with some so promising companies like ML6 or RoboVision, but also in narrow interaction with the universities. So it's a strong network that will present what they do in Flanders, and you can follow their session starting at 3 p.m. And in the later, you will have the presentation of the first trend of the barometer of AI adoption within the Belgian hospital, and a debate about artificial intelligence and human intelligence. So thank you so much. I leave you there, we'll leave you there, and see you tomorrow for the European AI Day, and don't miss the closing ceremony at 6 p.m. Bye-bye.